The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, I'm Matt Keeley and welcome to today's webinar, which is hosted by the Clean Energy Solutions Centre in partnership with the Building Efficiency Accelerator, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and the World Resources Institute. Today's webinar is focused on the building momentum for energy efficiency through voluntary targets and improvement programs. Before we begin, I'll quickly go over some of the webinar features. For audio, you have two options. You might either listen through your computer or over your telephone. If you choose to listen through your computer, please select the mic and speakers option in the audio pane. Doing so will eliminate the possibility of feedback and echo. If you choose to dial in by phone, please select the telephone option and a box on the right-hand side will display the telephone number and audio pin you should use to dial in. If anyone is having technical difficulties with the webinar, you may contact GoToWebinar's help desk. If you'd like to ask a question, we ask you to use the questions pane where you may type in your question. If you're having difficulty viewing the materials through the webinar portal, you'll find PDF copies of the presentations at cleanenergysolutions.org/training, and you may follow along as the speakers present. Also, the audio recording and presentations will be posted to the Solutions Centre training page within a few days of the broadcast and will be added to the Solutions Centre YouTube channel where you will find other informative webinars, as well as video interviews with thought leaders on clean energy policy topics. Finally, one important note of mention before we begin our presentations is that the Clean Energy Solutions Centre does not endorse or recommend specific products or services. Information provided in this webinar is featured in the Solutions Centre's resource library as one of many best practice resources reviewed and selected by technical experts. So today's webinar is centered around the presentations from our guest panelists, Ms. Caroline Zhu, Dr. Jin Hu, Mr. Mao Singh, as well as an introduction of the Building Efficiency Accelerator by Shannon Hilsey. And they've joined us to discuss the core elements of the Building Energy Efficiency Targets Playbook. Before we jump into today's presentations, I'll provide a quick overview of the Clean Energy Solutions Centre. Then following the panelists' presentations, we'll have a question and answer session where the panelists will address questions submitted by the audience. At the end of the webinar, you'll automatically be prompted to fill out a brief survey. We thank you in advance for taking a moment to respond to this. So the Clean Energy Solutions Centre was launched in 2011 under the Clean Energy Ministerial. The Clean Energy Ministerial is a high-level global forum to promote policies and programs that advance clean energy technology, to share lessons learned and best practices, and to encourage the transition to a global clean energy economy. 24 countries and the European Commission are members, contributing 90% of clean energy investment and responsible for 75% of global greenhouse gas emissions. This webinar is provided by the Clean Energy Solutions Centre, which is an initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial. The Solutions Centre focuses on helping government policymakers design and adopt policies and programs that support the deployment of clean energy technologies. This is accomplished through access to no-cost expert policy assistance and capacity building activities, such as this webinar. The Solutions Centre is co-sponsored by the governments of Australia and the United States. The Solutions Centre provides several clean energy policy programs and services, including a team of over 60 global experts that can provide remote and in-person technical assistance to governments and government-supported institutions, no-cost virtual webinar trainings on a variety of clean energy topics, partnership building with development agencies and regional and global organisations to deliver support, as well as an online library containing over 3,500 clean energy policy related publications, tools, videos, and other resources. Our primary audience is made up of energy policymakers and analysts from governments and technical organisations in all countries. We also strive to engage with the private sector, NGOs, and civil society. The Solutions Centre is an international initiative that works with more than 35 international partners across its suite of different programs. Several of the partners are listed above and include research organizations like IRENA and IEA, and programs like the Sustainable Energy for All program, and regionally focused entities such as the ECOWAS Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. Our marquee feature of a Solution Center provides is the no-cost expert policy assistance known as the Ask an Expert. Ask an Expert service matches policymakers with one of more than 60 global experts selected as authoritative leaders on specific clean energy finance and policy topics. Again, the assistance is provided free of charge. If you have a question for our experts, please submit it through our simple online form at cleanenergysolutions.org/expert. We also invite you to spread the word about the service to those in your networks and organizations. So our first presenter today is Shannon Hilsey, who is a project associate at the World Resources Institute. I'll pass it over to Shannon to start off today's webinar.
Thanks, Matt. And hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are so grateful to the Clean Energy Solutions Center for hosting our webinar series, and I'm very excited to be doing this webinar today with our partners at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and Shanghai Changning District. We want to quickly get to the real content of today's webinar, which is on energy efficiency targets and improvement programs. So I'm going to very briefly give an introduction to our program, the Building Efficiency Accelerator, for anyone on the line who may not have already known about us, who may not already be a partner. We're happy to be presenting today both to some existing partners in the BEA as well as partners who may be interested in working with us in the future, and we hope you will be after this webinar. As Matt said, we will be starting with this introduction and then moving on to some content on building momentum for energy efficiency through voluntary targets and improvement programs with Carolyn at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and then we'll have a case study presented by Mr. Mao Chin at the Shanghai Changning District. At the end of the webinar, we'll have a little bit of time for questions and answers, which you can submit in the questions box to the right, as Matt said. Building Efficiency Accelerator Partnership, this is part of a webinar series, and we'll be happy to share these webinars as well as links to other webinars that we've had, but we do a lot more than webinars. We are a public-private partnership that was begun in association with the Sustainable Energy for All initiative of the United Nations, with the goal of aiming to double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency worldwide by 2030. And there were several different energy efficiency accelerators initiated by the UN for that purpose in a number of different sectors. We are the buildings related partnership of that sector, and we work specifically with city leaders to try and support city leadership on building efficiency. So focusing on what sustainability experts in subnational governments worldwide can do to lead their local markets toward more efficient buildings. I won't spend too much time on why building efficiency is important, because I think everyone is on the line today because they are already interested in it. But I think one of the key pieces that we focus on a lot of times is the long-lasting implications of buildings. The lifespan of buildings being 40 to 100 years or more really means that as our cities worldwide develop, this is an urgent time to start thinking about energy efficiency before those inefficient buildings and high costs and high emissions get locked in. Currently, the Building Efficiency Accelerator is a partnership of over 50 global partners. They're not all pictured here. We have some updating to do, but we have many partners across the organizational and private sector space. And we're proud as of now to be partnered with 50 subnational jurisdictions worldwide, including the 7 on the right that most recently joined from Latin America. When cities sign up with the Building Efficiency Accelerator, they commit to 3 actions in support of our global vision of making all new buildings highly efficient and zero carbon by 2030 and all buildings by 2050. Cities commit to adopting and implementing an enabling policy, to implementing a pilot program, and to tracking and communicating their work and sharing lessons with other cities. Today, we're going to focus specifically on city actions that relate to energy efficiency targets and improvement programs. And this is just a very small sampling of the types of actions that cities might choose, which fall into that category. In Dubai, they recently completed a benchmarking study of 100 buildings, issued scorecards and recommendations to the participants in that program. Mexico City is launching a private sector energy efficiency challenge program to lead the private sector in the city toward energy efficiency in a voluntary way. And in Nairobi, they're aiming to commence baseline studies on water and energy usage in order to inform their future work on building efficiency. In support of city action, the BEA provides a variety of support, including help with a local action prioritization and tracking process, a wide variety of tools and solutions offered by our many organizational partners, such as the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, who you'll hear from in a little while, as well as guidance on finance and funding opportunities and opportunities for international recognition. Our specific technical assistance offer has several different layers, which we're happy to talk through with you after the webinar if you're interested. But today we're going to be focusing on a self-guided resource we call Playbooks, as well as on our energy topics, or energy targets, which is one of our 3 core thematic offers within the BEA. Carolyn will talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Just as a note, this is a complicated slide and I'm not going to go through it all, but our BEA City Action process is a series of 5 steps, and the playbooks that Carolyn is going to be discussing will be a self-guided resource that will focus primarily on the central 3 steps of action that lead to implementation of building efficiency actions and result in energy savings. So we'd love to speak with any organizations or cities that are interested in getting more involved with the BEA or ramping up their work after the webinar. But with that, I am going to switch to Carolyn, who will get to the real content that you came here for.
Thanks, Shannon. So Matt, I will ask if you could kindly put up my presentation, and then I will help advance the slides. So thanks everyone for joining this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here today. As Shannon indicated, we're going to present on the Targets Playbook, which is one tool in BEA's toolkit, which aims to help cities to develop voluntary existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement programs. I'll very briefly introduce my team. Also on the line is Dr. Jing Ho, a joint postdoc fellow of Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and Tsinghua University, as well as Mr. Mao Chin, who's the Deputy Director of the Urban Renewal and Low Carbon Project Management Center of Changning District. Next slide, please. So I think what I'll mention here, I think Shannon gave an excellent introduction to today's global energy and climate challenges, as well as the importance of building energy efficiency in achieving our overall 2015 Paris Agreement targets. What I'll add here is that in this webinar, we intend to provide step-by-step case study-based information for cities and building portfolio managers to develop and implement voluntary building efficiency targets and improvement programs. In general, while defining energy efficient high performance building through codes can be considered the foundation of a successful energy efficiency market transformation effort, voluntary energy efficiency targets and improvement programs provide critical direction and momentum They not only encourage buildings to be operated at significantly reduced energy usage levels, but they also incentivize the buildings industry, the designers, the developers, the owners, the managers, etc., to introduce innovative strategies and technologies to deliver large volumes of energy efficient, high performance buildings, which should help to increase the cost effectiveness of these technologies and solutions over time. I'll also say that this particular webinar will draw on the case study of Changning District, Shanghai, which has used a pioneering targets-based building energy efficiency program to establish itself as a leading low carbon district in Asia and globally. Next slide, please. So here's a little bit of background on the Changning District in Shanghai. It's one of 16 districts in the city. Shanghai is also China's largest economic center. It covers about 38 square kilometers and has a population of close to 700,000 residents. This district is established with mostly commercial buildings, also with a few industrial activities. It's really been at the forefront of Shanghai's effort to transition to a low carbon city. It sought to achieve this vision by leveraging international expertise, such as from the World Bank, and piloting innovative policies and programs yet to be implemented anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country. In addition, in 2011, one of their business districts, Hongqiao, was selected as one of 8 low carbon demonstration areas in Shanghai. Next slide, please. Generally, establishing a city-level voluntary efficiency targets and improvement program includes 4 phases: assessment, development, implementation, and improvement. Each of these phases contains several steps, and we're going to talk about these more as we go forward. Next slide, please. So the first stage for establishing a voluntary existing building energy efficiency and targets improvement program is to assess the current situation as pertains to targets, policies, and programs and data to understand the possibilities and potential barriers. So with regard to targets, questions cities will want to ask themselves are there existing national, provincial, and local energy or greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets for the building sector? If so, what are those targets and how is progress towards the targets measured? Secondly, cities will want to do an inventory of existing policies and programs. Mandatory programs such as codes and standards, regulations, as well as voluntary initiatives such as training, information programs, etc. Cities will want to understand what achievements have been made in building energy conservation as a result of these policies. And also, how would a voluntary existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement program fit into this existing ecosystem and framework? Lastly, and most importantly, cities are going to want to assess their capacity as pertains to data. Questions that will want to be asked are, is there an inventory of existing buildings stock for the city? Are data on the characteristics such as size, location, collected, cleansed, organized, and stored and analyzed in the city? If so, what data are collected by whom, how often, in what format? Where is the data stored and what analyses are conducted? If not, where and how could one obtain the necessary data and information above and or initiate a data collection effort? Next slide, please. In the case of Changning District, they undertook a very thorough analysis of existing targets, both at the national level and the local level. They also did a thorough review of national, provincial, and municipal building energy efficiency programs and policies, even prior to initiating their targets and improvement program. They looked at existing codes. They looked at retrofit business models which had been put into place. They also determined that their district itself had made steady progress in a number of areas, including exploration, of existing building retrofits, promotion of an integrated renewable energy application, supervision of building energy efficiency, training on building energy efficiency, etc. They also had an important advantage as pertains to data. And that was that in July 2011, they had put into operation a commercial building energy consumption monitoring platform, the ECMP. This was a real-time online building energy performance monitoring system that covered 100 commercial buildings in Changning District and collected on an ongoing basis total energy consumption by end uses and system, and broken down by fuel type, as well as other important characteristics on buildings such as type and function, size, construction year, occupancy, etc. Next slide, please. So once a city has undertaken an initial assessment of data, targets, and policies and programs, they're going to want to look at the benefits and potential barriers to a targets and improvement program. Questions cities will want to ask at this stage include what information exists on the benefits of voluntary targets and improvement programs. Are there case studies, reports, analyses that can be assessed? What information is needed to understand the benefits for our city, and how could we obtain this data? As well as what barriers might be faced when implementing this type of program and how we could overcome these barriers. Next slide, please. In the case of Changning District, again, they undertook a very thorough assessment of benefits. They invited World Bank and international consulting firms to partner with their government and to develop a carbon dioxide abatement cost curve for one particular district, for the district. They focused on one particular zone, the Hongqiao Economic and Technology Demonstration Zone, to undertake this cost curve study. I won't go into a lot of detail about the CO2 abatement cost curve, but just indicate that it allowed them to systematically understand the abatement potential, the cost and ease of implementation of various CO2 mitigation options. What they determined from this study was that existing building energy efficiency improvement was the single largest emission reduction opportunity in their district. And moreover, it was one of the least cost methods to reduce CO2 emissions. They determined that this particular approach to improve existing building energy efficiency could also help the district achieve its goals and vision for for carbon emissions reductions. And another target they had set for a 33,000 tons of coal equivalent goal for their district. Once they had established that existing building energy efficiency was going to be a critical piece of their overall vision to become a low carbon district in China, they had to look at what barriers may be faced when improving existing building energy efficiency. Some of the barriers that they identified included split incentives, such as the fact that building owners are responsible for financing improvements in building energy efficiency, but often the benefits flow to tenants and renters who have lower costs for their energy utilities. They also determined barriers such as lack of financial incentives, lack of understanding of business models to drive energy efficiency in existing buildings. Next slide, please. So once an assessment of benefits and barriers has been undertaken, cities then want to look at which stakeholders and what tools and resources will be needed to implement an existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement program. Questions to ask include what institutions in the city have been responsible or have expertise for existing building energy efficiency, either government, academic, research, nonprofit. What institutions should be assigned leadership roles or support roles? Who should be involved in designing the program, implementing the program, or advising technically or strategically? And do these institutions have all the resources and tools they need, financial, equipment, skills? If not, where and how could they procure these resources? Next slide, please. In the case of Changning District, you can see in the graphic on the upper right that their first step was to identify all stakeholders relevant to designing and implementing a voluntary energy efficiency targets and improvement program for commercial buildings. They determined that they needed support from municipal government and sector governments, building owners, operation management teams within buildings, property management companies, developers, ESCOs, financial institutions such as banks, renters, and government service occupants. Their second step, and very critical, was to set up a new institution, the Shanghai Changning District Urban Renewal and Low Carbon Project Management Center, to coordinate and integrate the strengths of the different stakeholders and to take charge of the low carbon transition of the district. Changning District also identified a variety of tools and resources to support design and implementation of their program. They leveraged their real-time commercial building monitoring platform, World Bank's abatement cost curve tool, benchmarking tools, building simulation tools, implementation planning tools. They also identified international best practice case studies, procured government financial support, and access to external experts from World Bank, Global Environment Facility, and others. Next slide, please. So that concludes the session on assessment. I'm now going to talk a little bit about developing existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement programs. Next slide, please. So questions that cities will want to ask right up front when they begin developing these policies is, okay, I need to define the scope and policy of this policy. So what type of existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement program do I want to establish? Do I want to put in place energy use intensity, performance-based targets for my building stock, or a percentage better than a baseline target, or a percentage better than code target, or a type of information program? I need to think about how existing building energy efficiency targets could be established, what science-based methods I would use, from the very simple to the more complex. What are the advantages and disadvantages of various approaches to establishing and implementing targets and improvement targets? What are the estimated costs and impacts of these various methods? On which buildings will I implement this targets and improvement program? And what will the scope of the entire program be? Will I include training, technical assistance, use of online tools, financing, etc.? Next slide, please. So in the case of Changning District, they undertook really a four-phased approach to fulfill this component of the target setting approach. First and foremost, they undertook a thorough analysis involving numerous outside experts to select the type of existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement program that they would implement. They assessed both national building codes as targets for buildings and also performance-based energy use intensity targets. They looked at standard methodologies of kWh per square meter, as well as normalized approaches to setting targets. In other words, factoring out all of the influences on building energy performance that can't be controlled by building owners and managers to create more equitable targets associated with the program. And I'm not going to go into depth here in this webinar on the different methodologies that they explored. Those are contained in our Targets Playbook, and we're happy to answer questions. But what I will say is that once they had looked at all of these methods, they undertook additional analysis to understand the pros and cons of each of these target setting methodologies. The approach they took may not be right for every city, but there's some valuable information in the playbook as to what might be pros and cons of different methods. In the case of the performance-based targets, these energy use intensity targets, some of the positives include linking directly to the energy savings goal for a particular district. Also, measurement and verification is very straightforward in terms of this type of target. Important things to consider is the need to factor out or normalize for all of the various influences on building energy consumption, which are outside the owner or manager's control, such as occupancy or operating hours or services and amenities, in order to create an equitable target that building owners and operators are willing to buy into. This may require additional data collection and regression analyses, etc. Targets based on current building codes also should be considered. In the case of Changning District, they had determined that not all buildings had actually met the current national code level, which was a 50% improvement in energy performance against a 1980s baseline building. Simply asking buildings to meet code was one option that they considered for their targets and improvement program. The advantage of this is that it's more legitimate to enforce. Some of the disadvantages include not having a direct link to an overall energy savings goal, and in this case, emissions reduction target identified in their CO2 abatement cost curve exercise. In addition, targets based on codes tend to be heavily technology focused, and there's less flexibility in terms of selecting the most effective energy efficiency options to achieve actual energy performance, operating energy performance in buildings. In terms of a third aspect of defining the scope of the policy or measure, Changning District also looked at the estimated costs and impacts of the various methods for target setting. That information is contained in the lower left graphic. It's also in our Targets Playbook. But they determined that some of these methods would be more expensive to implement and may have lower or higher energy and GHG emissions reductions outcomes. Finally, they had to determine on which buildings they would implement their targets and improvement program. They took a very detailed, stepwise analytical approach to identify both the buildings as well as the type of target setting method that they would employ. Ultimately, they chose a performance-based target setting methodology using a normalized approach, i.e. factoring out variables such as occupancy and operating hours to set equitable targets that could be bought into by various stakeholders. You can see in the lower right-hand graphic the specific building types and the amount of energy savings that would be achieved by implementing these normalized targets, driving toward their overall goal of 33 tons of coal equivalent avoided in the district. Next slide, please. Also, in terms of development, cities are going to need to think about how to develop locally appropriate policies related to existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement. Questions cities want to ask at this phase is, will there be any incentives or disincentives to motivate buildings to achieve their targets? If so, what types of incentives, certifications, awards, subsidies, or disincentives, such as higher utility rates? Will there be a technical assistance program for buildings to help them achieve these targets? And if so, what type of technical assistance, training, tools, experts? Next slide, please. In the case of Changning District, they evaluated a range of implementable incentives and disincentives to promote stakeholder buy-in of their overall voluntary targets and improvement program. A mapping of these measures by stakeholder group is shown in the lower left. This is not a comprehensive list, but illustrates the various options explored by the district. In addition to this, Changning government implemented a new policy, the management method of special funds for low carbon development in Shanghai district, which would be valid for 5 years. This this particular management method's policies are shown in the right and incorporated things such as subsidies for interruption associated with operation for retrofit, existing building energy efficiency project support, subsidies for demonstration projects, etc. Next slide, please. The third component of the development phase is policy adoption. Questions that may be asked by cities at this phase are, what are the specific targets by building type, and what specific policy measures are necessary to facilitate the targets and improvement program adoption. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, Changning District had an overall goal to reduce the district's total coal consumption by 33,000 tons of coal equivalent. They decomposed that target across various building types, hotels, shopping malls, office buildings, etc., and determined which specific buildings needed to save how much energy in order to meet these goals. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, they set up a new policy program as well as leveraged some additional outside measures such as financial support, implementation of reward measures, access to financing support, and incentive policies. All of these are detailed extensively in the Targets Playbook, so I won't go into them in depth here. Next slide, please. So the fourth component of the development stage is to create an implementation plan. And questions cities will want to ask is, what will the implementation plan for the Targets and Improvement Program contain? Will there be a time frame for buildings to achieve these targets? And what tools and resources will be necessary? Next slide, please. In the case of Changning District, they used a project implementation plan computer-aided tool. And you can see an output from that in the right side of the slide. They also developed a time frame for implementation of their Targets and Improvement Program aspects. Phase 1 would focus on improving energy efficiency in buildings where the actual energy use intensity was higher than the target value, and these buildings also represented the largest energy savings potential that could be achieved, such as through major retrofit or lighting retrofits. Phase 2 would be to focus on improving energy efficiency where the actual energy use intensity is higher than the target value, but the energy savings that could be achieved would be at a higher cost, so envelope retrofits, for example. Phase 3 would be to focus on buildings where actual energy use intensity is higher than the target value, but the actual energy potential savings is small. Next slide, please. So that concludes the development section, and now I'm going to focus on implementation. So the first component of implementation is implementing the energy savings actions. So questions municipalities will want to answer at this phase include, what are the procedures needed to implement the voluntary energy efficiency targets and improvement program? How will stakeholders participate and interact with one another in this process? Next slide, please. So in the case of Changning District, on the left here, you can see that the district did an excellent job during the implementation phase to analyze potential problems and design both specialized models and traditional models to address these problems. Again, I'm not going to go into detail here because of time limitations, and also this information is contained in our playbook. But you can see in the diagram on the right that Changning District had a very complex model associated with implementation of energy savings actions involving ESCOs, building owners, the Changning District government, financial institutions, and other government stakeholders. And I think Mr. Mao and Jing Ho can answer any questions associated with this management process during their presentation. Next slide, please. Also incorporated into the implementation phase is monitoring progress and making adjustments, taking immediate action to resolve problems that may arise. So questions municipalities will want to ask at this stage include, how will the impact of the existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement program be measured and evaluated? So what key performance indicators will be assessed and how often? What outcome indicators will be used to evaluate whether this program is a success or not? Who will participate in the measurement and verification? What is the level of participation in the voluntary program? Is it sufficient to achieve overall goals? And to identify problems as they arise and take corrective actions. Next slide, please. In the case of Changning District, they identified a number of key performance indicators, including the number of buildings implementing energy efficiency measures, total floor area, implementing EE measures, energy savings achieved, total carbon dioxide emissions reduced, total subsidies approved to implement energy efficiency measures, and the percentage of the overall target for the district achieved. In the lower graph, you can see that they also had built-in feedback mechanisms, such as when the government would issue a policy and it would be applied in the marketplace, there would be immediate feedback from professional services organizations involved in the marketplace to government so that they could take corrective action. Next slide, please. The third component of implement is to showcase to stakeholders and the public what results are being achieved or have been achieved. So questions cities will want to ask is, what is the level of energy and GHG emissions reductions that have been achieved? What other benefits from voluntary energy efficiency targets beyond just these targets have been realized? Have we increased the market for energy efficiency services? Have we improved building comfort? Have we created new jobs? To what extent have the targets helped to support energy and GHG emissions reductions in buildings? And how can participants be recognized for their outstanding achievement? Next slide, please. So again, Changning District, during its 60-month implementation period for this project, did an excellent job of tracking key performance indicators and was able to therefore communicate very effectively both with domestic and international audiences on their achievements, which are shown in the upper box on this slide. They also did an excellent job of participating in international and domestic summits, forums, technical seminars, establishing connections with multilateral banks, non-government organizations, consultancies, etc., to both learn and to share their experience. And you can see some of the examples of their outreach on the slide, on the lower part of the slide. Next slide, please. So the final phase is improvement. Next slide, please. And questions that cities will want to ask at this point include, what is the level of participation in our program? What are the energy and GHG impacts of the program? How effective have our tools and resources, incentives, and institutional setup been? What other benefits have been realized? What is the scale or the potential for scale up and replication? And how can benefits in particular be scaled? Next slide, please. In the case of Changning District, they've focused on continual improvement as pertains in particular to their energy consumption monitoring platform. They now have 187 commercial buildings connected to the ECMP and have extended and upgraded that platform, adding new functions and ensuring that their platform is supporting additional relevant stakeholders. Government, ESCOs, research institutions, and building owners. In addition, they've continued to update the CO2 abatement cost curve based on real data from these 100 existing buildings in their district that have participated in the existing building energy efficiency Targets and Improvement Program. Next slide, please. This has also included Changning District developing additional useful tools, such as a case database, energy consumption status assessment and diagnostic tools. They've also continued to review and evaluate the long-term impacts of their existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement program, identifying aspects of their pilot that are most replicable, and of course sharing with international stakeholders in forums such as the Building Efficiency Accelerator. Next slide, please. Also an improvement, existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement programs will require municipalities to continue to think about what has worked and what hasn't worked. Again, how do we continue to improve? Should we consider increasing the stringency of our targets or applying them to more buildings? How can we achieve this and in what time frame? And again, Changning District has continued to evaluate the results of its programs and identify next steps. They have sought to increase the number of existing commercial buildings in their district that will participate in these types of existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement programs. They're also continuing to assess technologies, policies, and institutional mechanisms that can be leveraged to further drive energy savings and renovations in their existing buildings. Next slide, please. So I'll conclude with a few tips associated with existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement programs. I think very important is that not only energy can be considered in these types of targets and improvement programs, but also taking into account opportunities to improve comfort and service levels in buildings. Transferring energy savings into cost savings can help make the business case for building owners and management companies to get involved. Leveraging opportunities to optimize building functions through renovation processes. In addition, policymakers should ensure that they have support from many relevant authorities. They should consider if subsidies and other incentives could be leveraged from government, either central or local, and strategies to persuade ESCOs and other stakeholders to get involved. On the data side, we can't stress enough how important this is. Data is really at the core of an existing building energy efficiency targets and improvement program. And while Changning District had access to a very sophisticated energy consumption monitoring platform, that's not a requirement. And the Building Efficiency Accelerator and Lawrence Berkeley National Lab have online free software tools that can support cities in collecting and analyzing data. Training is also important to take into account. There are often gaps between the design intent of a building and the actual operational energy performance. So training building engineering teams to maximize the efficiency of equipment and systems in a building is critical to achieving actual goals in a voluntary targets and improvement program. We've seen thousands of buildings that have the most advanced high-tech technology, but if that's not operated to high levels of efficiency, beneficial outcomes cannot be realized. Also, it's important to publicize and share findings that not only connects you to a network, but it also allows you to share lessons, gain new insights, and really to benefit other cities that may be looking to do what you're doing. So that's all for today, and I look forward to hearing from Mr. Mao and Jing Ho with more information on Changning District's activities.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for an excellent presentation. I'd just like to remind everyone that if you'd like to ask a question during about any of today's presentations or speakers, please ask them in the questions pane. We'll hope to respond to these at the end of today's webinar. I'll now introduce Dr. Jing Ho, who is a joint postdoc fellow of the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab in US and Tsinghua university in China. Dr. Jing will be translating for our next presentation today, Mr. Mao Jin, who will be joining us and will also be joining us for the question and answer session after Mr. Mao's presentation. So our final speaker today is Mr. Mao Jin, who is Deputy Director of the Urban Renewal and Low Carbon Project Management Center of Changning District in Shanghai. So I'll now pass it over to Jing and Mr. Mao to present on Mao's slides. I'll bring in here Shannon Hilsey, who might lead the Q&A session. Shannon, do you have any questions for Carolyn? And Carolyn, do you have any questions or any other suggestions to bring into this conversation before Mr. Mao presents? Over to you.
Sure. I'd love to invite anyone on the line who has questions for what we've presented so far. Please let us know with the question box that is to the right of your screen. I want to start just by asking Carolyn, your slides were wonderful, and it's a really great, straightforward set of steps for city leaders that are interested in making progress on energy efficiency, existing building targets. I'm interested to know what you think. You spoke a little bit about national government incentives, like a building code, for instance, that might prompt a city to be pursuing specific targets for their existing building renovation and programs. But I'm wondering if there's anything else that you think a national government in particular can do to support this kind of work at the city level, or things that cities can ask for, from their national governments.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot that national government can do to support these city level targets and improvement programs. I think of off the top of my head would be subsidies or some sort of financial incentive, perhaps a tax rebate or subsidies for buildings that actually undertake retrofits or existing building energy efficiency improvements. That's a direct way that cities can help to incentivize movement in the marketplace for energy efficiency. Another way that national governments can support beyond financing is through by other policies that kind of augment existing building energy efficiency improvement, such as perhaps data transparency requirements, making public a building's energy use intensity levels or energy performance. If national governments are also able to develop analytic tools like benchmarking tools, or gain access to those tools for use in their country or in their cities, that's quite powerful as well in terms of spurring and supporting targets and improvement programs. You know, they're often responsible for codes and standards. And as I mentioned, a strong building code is often a foundation that's important for a targets and improvement program, where some cities may want to consider targets built around those codes and standards. So there's quite a lot of action that national governments can take. And certainly I think Changning District did a very good job of leveraging all sorts of national level initiatives that they leveraged targets that existed, requirements for energy consumption display, preferential taxes and subsidies that existed. They also leveraged financial support for energy audits that was made available by the national government. I think also, Shannon, that national governments can play a major role in reward. So offering some type of high profile recognition for buildings and cities that achieve outcomes or take action. And that's quite low cost. And I think also very effective in providing motivation for existing building efficiency improvement.
Thanks, Carolyn. That's great. And I think your last point on national government, particularly providing sort of the soft incentive of publicity and recognition of city level work, although, you know, it's a soft benefit, but can also be have very tangible benefits for the municipal government. And that's something that for those of you interested in the Building Efficiency Accelerator, that's something that we're working increasingly on, is working with national governments to figure out what cities in the country need in particular to support, enable, and incentivize their building efficiency work at the subnational level, and bring together those levels of government that don't always talk to each other about what mutually supportive actions they can take in service of their national and global climate goals. So I think that's a really great point and something that we're working to improve and increase across our network.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. We might just see if we can try Mr. Mao again. Mr. Mao,
Sure.
have you muted yourself, or you're good to go? Xing, you mate.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
就是我来解释一下，就第3页，第一个就是就是上海市长宁区呢是位于上海市中心城区的西部，它的面积呢是约38平方公里。
So Shanghai Changning District is located in the western part of Shanghai and in the downtown area, covering an area of 38 square kilometers.
实际上就是从1990年开始啊，就是从我们整个区内，就尤其是虹桥地区，在虹桥地区，我们新建了一批办公宾馆、商场等大型的公共建筑。
Okay, since 1990, a number of large commercial buildings, such as office buildings, hotels, and shopping malls, have been built in Changning District, especially in Hongqiao area.
近年来就是建筑节能啊，已经成为长宁区可持续发展的重点领域。
In recent years, building energy efficiency has become a key area for sustainable development in Changning District.
因为在长宁已经没有工业了。
Because there is no industry in Changning anymore.
为做好就是建筑节能这项工作，从2013年开始，长宁区执行了世界银行上海低碳城市项目。
To promote building energy efficiency, Changning District implemented the World Bank Shanghai Low Carbon City project since 2013.
实际上还是希望能够通过执行这个世界银行项目啊，就是通过大型既有公共建筑节能低碳改造，节能推动一个新理念、新技术、新能源的应用，提升城市的软实力。
Yeah, Changning, they were hoping to implement this World Bank mega projects for building energy efficiency improvement to improve a city's soft power in Changning District.
什么叫城市软实力呢？就是我们的理解就是有许多新的技术的应用，能够带动一批产业，从而提升这个地区，从而提升这个城市、这个地区的一个经济发展的一个潜力。
What is soft power of a city? Changning District, they think it's about promoting a lot of new concepts to implement some new technologies and new energy applications through low carbon energy efficiency retrofit projects and cultivate a lot of industries and technologies and promote economic.
还有我们就是通过了国际合作，能够借鉴和应用国内外的一个先进的理念、技术和机制，从而使我们长宁能够形成一个体制机制完善、运作模式创新的一个可推广、可复制的一个经验与做法。
So at the same time, promoting international cooperation and drawing on and applying advanced concepts, technologies, and mechanisms domestic and abroad, forming experiences and practices that can be popularized and replicated with perfect system and mechanism, complete policy system, and innovative operation mode.
项目执行期间呢，实际上我们和就是世界银行、能源基金会和那个全球环境基金都有着很好的合作。
So during the project process, in the implement process, Changning District cooperated with World Bank and Energy Foundation and IFC.
我们还获得了 WRI、NRDC、C40等很多一些国际环保组织的一些支持。
And the Changning District also accepted a lot of support from NRDC, WRI, and C40.
好，下一页。
Okay, next page, please.
这是我们从2012年至2018年，就取得的一些成果。实际上是累计完成既有建筑节能项目总共45个，就是建筑面积达到240万平方米，年节能约3万吨标每年，就年节能约3万吨标准每。
好的。So this page indicates that through 2012 to 2018, and Changning have completed 45 existing building energy efficiency retrofit projects in this district, and with a total floor area of 2.4 million square meters, and have an annual energy saving of about 30,000 tons of standard coal.
下一页。
Thank you.
下一页。
哎，好了。
就是出来了。就是通过这张图我们看到，就是整个项目我们在项目的执行过程当中，基于对于建筑能效提升的理念也在逐步发生了变化。
So this page indicate that through the implementation process over the years, the concept of building energy efficiency improvement is changing.
项目开始的时候，就2012年项目开始的时候，我们对那个建筑能效提升的主要路径是设备设施能效的提升。
So at the beginning of the World Bank project, that's in 2012, the path to improve existing building energy efficiency of large existing commercial buildings or reduce the energy consumption of large existing is to improve the energy efficiency of equipment and facilities in the large existing buildings.
具体的内容就是实施对那个主要的设施设备实施改造。
To be specific, it's just to replace and retrofit equipment and facilities in the building.
但是到经过了一段时间的这个改造以后啊，就是我们发现有很多建筑的那个设备设施啊，实际上没有到使用的寿命，单纯更换设备的经济性就较差。
But during the project implementation, after a few retrofit projects, Changning District realized that the equipment and the facilities of many existing buildings have not reached their service life, and it's not cost-effective to simply replace them.
就有许多楼宇的业主啊，他不愿意实施改造。
And many building owners are reluctant to carry out retrofit.
因此，我们就引入了就是调试的理念。
Therefore, Changning District introduced the continued commissioning concept into this project.
调试实际上不是一个新的理念，它在美国应该已经存在了许多年。
So building commissioning actually is not a new concept or technology. It's arisen in United States for a lot of years already.
但是 根据我们就长宁项目的经验啊，调试确实是一项就是非常经济化的一个能效提升的一个手段。
But based on Changning's experience, commissioning is really a very cost-effective approach for existing building energy efficiency improvement.
所以2016年开始，我们做建筑能效提升的主要路径就转变，主要的能效提升的主要内容就转变为调试加改造。
So,
调试结合改造。
Okay, so at the year 2016, Changning District, their existing building energy efficiency improvement retrofit project the parts become retrofit plus commissioning.
尤其是到了18年、19年啊，就是近年来，随着就是物联网技术的发展，
没事，您说完。
随着那个物联网技术的发展，尤其是那些物联网技术的相关的一些设备的技术的经济性啊，就有了很大的提高，所以智能运维管理也应运而生了。
In recent years, especially from 2018 to 2019, with the development of Internet of Things technology and the improvement of related technologies and economics, intelligent operation and maintenance management has emerged as the times requires.
相比于调试，我们通过那个就是智能管理啊，可以更及时的发现问题，更及时的解决问题，从而达到最多的节能量。
So compared to commissioning, we can 茂主任，您最后一句您能再重复一下吗？
我们能够拿到更多的节能量，更多的节能效果，或者说能效提升能够更加显著，能效提升的结果就更快、更显著。
好的。So 更快、更多。Compared to just the commissioning, so through intelligent management, we can get more savings through the intelligent management technology and the effective and more efficiency and more effective.
所以我们从现在开始啊，我们就是可以把智能管理加调试加改造作为目前我们建筑能效提升的主要路径。
So, therefore, for now, Changning District's main parts for existing building energy efficiency improvement consistent of intelligent management plus commissioning plus retrofit. Yeah.
好，下面就下一页吧，我会为大家介绍一下就是我们具体的一些做法。
Okay, next page we will introduce how Changning implement.
就是大家现在看到的这张 PPT 啊，实际上前面就是 Karen 也做了介绍，就是我们觉得这张 PPT 的作用非常巨大。
So this slide you are seeing at now is about the CO2 abatement cost curve. This cost curve, Caroline has mentioned just now. This tool is very effective.
这张 PPT 呢，这个成本曲线实际上是通过一个基础情况和市场的技术的一个，就是市场的一个所有技术的一个调研才绘制出来的，就长宁区的节能减排成本曲线。
So this Changning District CO2 emission abatement cost curve was drawn based on basic situation and market technology service in Changning District.
这张曲线的详细介绍可以在世界银行的网站上找到。
The details of this cost curve could be found in World Bank's report on their website.
这张曲线大家可以看到实际上是一个三维的。
This curve is
轴是减排。
您说。
就是 X， 这张轴是三维的 ，X 轴呢是它的那个减排量。
This curve is a three-dimensional. The x-axis refers to the emission reduction.
我们 是取当中的差值，使用是取当中的差值，就决定它的减排，就是计算它的减排量。
So we will use the difference value we will take the difference value as the emission reduction.
Y 轴是减排的成本。
The y-axis refers to the cost of emission reduction or energy savings.
这个成本是考虑了自设备采购以后，或者这项技术开始实施以后的全生命周期的一个成本。
This cost takes into account the cost of the whole life cycle of the equipment since the purchase.
0轴以上，我们这个投资是得不到回报的。
The zero axis above refers to the investment without return.
0轴下方是指投资是有回报的。
And the zero axis below refers to the investment with return.
通过这张曲线，我们可以发现，从经济性考虑，应该优先推荐采用投资回报最大的技术，并同时考虑它的实施的难易程度。
Okay, so through this curve, we can find that out of economic consideration, we should give priority to recommending the technologies with the largest return on investment and consider the difficulty of implementation at the same time.
好，下一张 PPT。
Next page, please.
通过这张 PPT， 大家可以看到，就是我们实际上是为我们的那个能效提升设计了一个顶层设计。
So this slide indicates Changning's top-level design for this project.
对于既有建筑能效提升，我们实际上是重点关注是2个方面，不是说就是在建筑方面，我们关注了既有建筑的能效提升和近邻建筑的一个试点示范。
Okay, for building sector, Changning focuses on 2 areas. The first one is existing building energy efficiency improvement area. The second one is net zero building pilot and demonstration projects.
整个支撑这要完成这些工作的支撑体系，就是我们整个构架顶层设计的重要内容。
So to fulfill all these targets and works, the supporting system is very important.
大家可以看到，我们有顶层设计，有体制机制，还有一个基础数据平台，这是属于政府管理部门或者是一些管理部门应该去做的事情。
So you could see from the supporting system, under this we have the institutional mechanisms and the data platform as support system for the targets and the project implementation.
我们还要引入金融机构的资金支持。
And we also introduce financial institutes, their financial support.
尤其是金融机构的一些能力建设，因为在传统的金融领域，它的那个就是金融的管理模式和资金投放模式，和我们的就是建筑改造的这个能效提升的这种管理就是模式是不一样的。
We also emphasize on the capacity building for the financial institutions because building energy efficiency improvement projects is different from the traditional loan projects and their process are totally different.
因为就是在建筑的能效提升方面，就是更多的是会采用一个合同能源的模式。
Because for existing building energy efficiency retrofit projects, a lot of projects will adopt the ASCO model to implement the retrofit.
所以我们也会帮助金融机构，我们也会对金融机构进行能力培训，就能力建设。
So we also implement some training to financial institutions for their capacity building.
帮助他们了解这些模式，
Help them to familiar with these models.
能够促进一些金融产品的能够促进一些新的金融产品的产生。
And promote some new financial products to support building energy efficiency projects.
最后一个就是一个技术支撑体系。
So the last one you will say is technical support system.
整个的技术支撑体系，实际上我们的理解，技术是发展的。
So in our opinion, the technology is developing.
所以有一个完善的技术支撑体系，能够不断的把新技术去引入，是非常重要的。
So it's very important to have a technical support system to introduce new technology in the system.
至少在我们项目当中，我们就使用了这些全过程管理的用能托管、建筑调试、节能成本曲线的一个，还有一个大数据的软件分析，这些新的技术都在我们的能效提升上、建筑能效提升上得到了应用。
So in our project, in our World Bank project, we use all these 5 very advanced technologies in our projects, like include whole process management, energy hosting, mode and building commissioning, abatement cost curve tool, and big data software analysis.
所有的这些构成了一个有效的体制机制。
So all of these three parts formed a very effective supporting system and institutional mechanisms.
我们在第5页里面提到的这些理念的变化，也是基于这种机制下而产生的。
So we mentioned earlier the concept changing during the project implementing process is based on this mechanism, this supporting system.
所以由于我们理解啊，由于每个地区的那个技术能力啊，经济成本和政策环境各不相同，所以建议还是根据每个地区，就是可以根据自己本地的一个具体条件，做好整个建筑能效提升的一个顶层设计。
So we understand that different cities, different areas have different contexts in their city. So we suggest that every city, if who want to implement similar program, you should to combine the context and the culture and all the relevant context and develop the top level design for your city first.
下一页。
Next page, please.
好，接下来我为大家介绍一下我们整个政策的设计和执行。
So now Mr. Mao will introduce the policy design and implement.
政策我们是从2个方面来考虑，一个是约束政策，一个是激励政策，也就是通常所说的胡萝卜加大棒。
So policy we consider from 2 aspects. The one is constraint policy and the other one is incentive policy, which is often referred to as carrot and stick.
对于那个约束政策，我们是借鉴了纽约市的那个能效对标的一个经验。
For the constraint policy, we draw on the experience of the New York City's energy efficiency benchmarking policy.
我们设计了符合强宁实际的一个能效对标公式的政策。
Based on their experience, we designed the energy efficiency benchmarking policy that complies with Changning's reality.
通过实施了这个能效对标，我们使建筑的业主啊，即使建筑的业主了解了他自身的能效水平，并且通过将数据的对外公示，形成了一个社会责任的一个对建筑业主的约束。
So by implementing regional energy efficiency benchmarking in Changning, on the one side, the building owners could understand their energy efficiency levels, and on the other side, further with the disclosure of the data, some constraints forming the constraint of social reliability for these companies.
左边这张图就是我们能效对标的一个结果，就是一个类似于像那个就是能效执照一样的一张表。我们会推送给我们会把这张表推送给建筑的业主，同时也会在网上进行公示。
So on this slide, the left figure you could see here is benchmarking results. This we will send it both to the building owner, and we will also disclose this on website. 对，好了。
实际上我们称之为是软约束，能效对标就是一种软约束。
And we call this benchmarking as a soft constraint policy.
相对那个约束政策来说，实际上补贴政策是更容易的去实施。
So relative to the constraint policy, the subsidy policy is easy to implement.
就5年以来，就是从13到18年，长宁区总共发放了补贴是2319万元，拉动市场投入是1.41亿元。
So through during the 5 years through 2013 to 2018, Changning District has subsidized 23.19 million RMB, and they drive a total social investment of 141 million RMB, and with a leverage ratio of 1 to 6.1.
我们的补贴更多的是会用于前面成本曲线分析的，就是那些投资回报没有投资回报的一些技术的实施。
So the subsidies will go to the technologies and energy efficiency measures, which is have no return without return in the cost curve.
好的，下一页。
Next page, please.
这张 PPT 就罗列了我们整个5年来所实施的所有的技术。
So these slides, you can see all the technologies we adopted during the 5 years implementation process of the World Bank project.
以及它的使用频率。
And the technologies and the frequency, their frequencies.
好，下一页。
Next page, please.
这张 PPT 我重点会介绍一下，就调试的尤其是那个 continue commissioning 就调试的在我们那个长宁的一个能效提升当中的应用场景。
So this page, Mr. Mao will mainly introduce 5 usage scenarios of building commissioning in Changning District.
第一种是直接就是独立调试是一个独立的咨询服务。
So the first one is the commissioning is an independent consultant service.
它和美国的 RC 的标准或者在美国实施的调试的模式是商业模式是一模一样的。
It's just exactly the same as the business model of building commissioning in the US, yeah.
第二种是 EM 就基于那个合同能源模式下的一个调试的一个服务。
So the second one you could see here is a model based on EMC model. The EMC model is equal to the ESCO model.
由于合同能源的一个模式下， 就是业主和那个建筑的业主和那个EMC 公司啊，他们会更多的关注在合同里面会更多的关注设备更换的成本。
So under a EMC model, the building owner and the service provider, they will focus more on the investment to replace equipment.
同时他们会以这个节能量作为一个付款的一个依据。
And also, they will draw the energy savings as the basic to pay for the payment.
但是就仅仅是设备更换，不能保证一个高回报的产生，高投资回报的产生。
好， yeah, but there it's sorry, but it's hard to guarantee a high reward, high return project with replace the equipment only.
我们在我们的项目里面就曾经是发现过，有合同能源公司在实施设备改造以后，聘请第三方的一个调试公司，再进行专业的调试。相比于没有请专业调试的那些合同能源模式，它获得了更高的回报。
So during the World Bank project, we found that some building owners, after the replacement of the equipment, they will hire some third-party independent consultant service company to provide some commissioning service for them. But some other building owners want to do this. But the results is the ones who have the third-party commissioning services, they get more energy savings.
还有第三种是改造后的持续优化的一个也会使用到一个调试的一个模式。
So the third mode is some follow-up optimization service of building retrofit.
由于某些企业、某些楼宇进行了改造，它的品质得到了提升，然后业态又会发生一些改变，所以这个时候就是调试也会作为他们一种保障他们的一个建筑能效的一个重要手段。
So because for some buildings, existing buildings, after retrofit, their energy efficiency got improved. And along with the energy efficiency improvement, their building type, their building space type in the building may change. So for guarantee their energy savings, they will also adopt the building commissioning in this case.
这三种模式是我们在常规在使用的模式。
So these three models are the three regular models we are adopting in the projects.
我们现在还在示范试点的有两种新的模式，一种是就基于托管模式下的一个常态化的调试。
So besides the three traditional modes, we also have two new pilot mode for building commissioning. The one is normalized building commissioning under energy hosting model.
由于是基于物联网的情况下使用了托管，就可以通过第三方的实时监测，能够了解楼宇的建筑的一个能效状况。
Because this model is based on the Internet of Things, so the energy consumption and energy efficiency could be monitored by the third party, and they can grasp the real energy efficiency of the building.
一旦发现就是有建筑能效上有问题，就可以及时的或者是进行调试。
Once some issues or some problems were found by the third party monitoring, then the commissioning will in time to adopt.
还有一种就是我们在示范一种就是以实际人效目标为目标的一个设备安装后的一个冷站调试的一个模式。
So the second pilot new model for commissioning is the cold station commissioning after equipment installation, aiming at actual energy efficiency target.
这两种模式我们是刚刚进行了示范试点，案例还比较少，但是我们觉得可能未来的发展方向，它比较符合未来的发展方向，所以我们以后会重点推动这两个方面的调试。
So these two new pilot model, which you can see in the most left and most right in the green color, these two models are very new, and there are not very much cases in reality, but we understand these two models are more suitable for the future and will be a trend. So we will, like Changning District, will promote these two models in the future. Next page, please.
Hey, Jing, we're a lot over time already, so I'm just wondering if we can go real quickly through the last two to finish up the webinar.
毛主任，咱们简单讲一下。
好的，这一张就是我们的一个案例，就是一个案例，大家可以看到，就是这个是改造的楼，它的实测数据有一个2010年的那个实测数据啊，节能率达到了23.85%。
So this slide is a real case of our projects in Changning District. So the energy savings is 23%.
它采用的就是那种就是合同能源模式下的一个调试的模式。
So it adopted the building commissioning model under EMC model.
下面两张图就是一个就是 BA 的一个展示。
是什么的展示啊？
BA 你就说 BA 就是那个就是。
行。So the lower two figures indicates the BA system.
好，下一张。
Next page, please.
这张图我们觉得对我们来说特别重要。
This figure is super important for us.
我们是根据我们5年的一个节能改造的数据，重新编制了一个节能减排的成本曲线。
So we based on our last 5 years accumulated data, real data, and developed this abatement cost curve.
我们把它做成了数据库。
We developed it into a database.
可以进行滚动更新。
The database could be continuously rolling update.
如果有新的楼宇改造的楼宇的数据案例进去，它这个就是具体的内容就会发生实时的变化。
Once some new project, retrofit project, their data get into the database, so the cost curve will directly change.
它还可以根据办公、宾馆、商场分裂出单独的一个成本曲线。
And it could be also further divided into 5 different cost curves, according to different commercial building types, like a hotel, shopping mall, and office building. Yeah.
因此，它对一个实际的使用啊，就是后续的改造项目的一个指导的实际的指导意义，就是非常好，就是非常有效。
So it has a very
改造项目的实际的指导意义非常有效。
So it has a very strong practical guidance for the following retrofit projects.
所以今天就是我最后一个建议就是还是如果要做好能效提升，建筑能效提升，还是要做好大数据的统计。
So my last recommendation today is to do a good job of data statistics and use the analysis results of big data to continuously
利用大数据的分析成果可以不断优化能效提升的一个效率。
And use the results of big data analysis to optimize the energy efficiency improvement paths in the cost curve.
好的，谢谢大家。
Okay, thank you all. Sorry for the delay.
Thank you, Mr. Mao. Thank you, Xinghao, for that insightful presentation. Apologies for the technical glitches. We'll hopefully smooth those out when the webinar goes live on YouTube and our website. So thank you for each of the panelists. We don't have any time for questions today, unfortunately, but if you have any questions, please feel free to direct those directly to each and all of our presenters, or go into their website and find resources there that might be able to help. So great, thank you again. On behalf of the Clean Energy Solutions Centre, I'd just like to extend a thank you to all of our expert panelists and to our attendees for participating in today's webinar. We very much appreciate your time and hope in return that there were some valuable insights that you can take back to your ministries, departments, or organisations. We also invite you to inform your colleagues and those in your networks about Solutions Centre resources and services, including our no-cost policy support through our Ask an Expert service. I invite you to check the Solutions Centre website if you'd like to view the slides and listen to a recording of today's presentations, as well as previously held webinars. Additionally, you will find information on upcoming webinars and other training events. We'll also be posting webinar recordings to the Clean Energy Solutions Centre YouTube channel. Please allow at least 1 week for the audio recording to be posted. Finally, I would like to kindly ask you to take a moment to complete the short survey that will appear when we conclude this webinar. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope to see you again at future Clean Energy Solutions Centre events. This concludes our webinar for today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Matt, Carolyn. Thanks.